Welcome back. So I know I'm in the hockey room. This is a discussion I've been wanting to have, and I want to have it in the quieter of the two rooms. And right now, this is the quieter of the two rooms. And so I've this is one of those topics that I'm going to record this video. We'll see if I upload it. The alpha male conversation I think is really interesting. Now, of course, Andrew Tate being arrested happens, but I was talking about doing this video before that. People who've watched live streams on my main channel and on Patreon would know this because I was talking about, I wanted to talk about alpha males, and it's a touchy conversation. It's a touchy conversation because I have never heard anything related to being an alpha male that I say, oh, I identify with that at all, and I just find it really, I don't know, it's odd, and it sounds like it's really exhausting that you'd be expending all that energy towards this ideal, and it's a weird ideal to have too. So my ideal growing up was that I wanted to get married, have kids, and have a decent life. And I didn't have these great ideas of running the world. I certainly didn't have any ideas that I would have some kind of a large following on the internet because the internet wasn't a thing when I was a kid. And so I just wanted to have a good and relatively quiet life. My life growing up was pretty hectic in terms of conflict, and it was tough. Now I always had problems with women, and I've my whole life had problems when it comes to dating, and just I'm so bloody awkward. I am so ridiculously awkward. If a woman's interested in me, I can't tell. If I'm interested, that means she isn't. Like it's just that was the whole storyline for most of my life. Now I've got Yvonne. Yvonne and I are great together. It just works. People have seen in live streams. It just works. Our personalities are not the same. We're quite different, but we've adapted to one another, which I think is important. And I think adapting is really important. If you want to make things work, one thing that I know when I was younger, I was raised by my mother, which has definitely made a difference to this. I was raised by my mother. My dad and I did not have a great relationship. So I watched soap operas, I watched talk shows. I sat with my grandmother and watched Young and the Restless, and I sit with my mother and then all three of us would get together and we'd talk about Young and the Restless. And Young and the Restless is a great soap opera because even now I can turn it on. It's been what 20 years since I watched it. I still know what's going on because it never changes. Oh, they're still together. Cool, great. Oh, they're broke up again. Surprise, surprise. How many marriages now? 8. Cool. It feels like that. It's not that many. And there were characters I had certain feelings about in terms of not liking them. And that was a funny topic of conversation too. And sometimes when I was younger, that was a good icebreaker. Where if I was in a group, and I'd hear people talking about General Hospital or talking about Another World was my favorite, that I could kind of jump in. And all I had to do to make it work, you couldn't just say, "Oh, I watched that." You had to mention a storyline. You had to start with, well, what I can't believe is that Cricket goes to become a lawyer, and 3 weeks later she's a lawyer, and then she's trying a murder case. What's that about? And bam, I've shown that I watched the show, I have an opinion on the characters, and I know the storylines that are currently going on. And it's good. Now, warning, that doesn't necessarily mean a girl's going to want to date you, but it was a good icebreaker. And so I've always been definitely more along the lines of, I don't even qualify it as a feminine thing because I think with TV now things have changed to where almost every show is a soap opera. It's very rare. It was one of the reasons why I don't watch TV as much as I used to. There's no such thing as episodic television, not really, other than It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I loved the show when I figured out, oh, this is episodic. Cool. So it's not just this big storyline overdrawn over every season. Even in The Office. The Office is a fun sitcom, single camera. But there's storylines that definitely go forward, and there's definitely some soap opera-ish stuff in there. Jim and Pam is a total soap opera. And there's Roy, and Jim loves in love with her, but he can't tell her, and she loves him, but she doesn't want to know, and she kind of knows, but she doesn't. And when she's been drinking, it comes out, and she doesn't really remember after, or maybe she does, and she pretends she doesn't. That's totally a soap opera idea. And Michael Scott is a soap opera character. He would be a soap opera villain, a comedic one, but definitely soap opera. So all of TV's kind of evolved into becoming a soap opera, minus some of the reality shows. There was one that there was one I saw the other night, and I said to myself, "This has to be one of those alpha things." Where I think they were in the Australian desert, and if you've watched this, you can let me know because it was the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And they were trying to get these lizards to bite them and see if they were venomous. And I'm thinking, see if the lizard can break the guy's skin on his arm. Um, my idea behind that, I would say no. So my answer to that would be, hey, you want to go out in the desert and pick up some lizards and see if they'll bite you? My answer would be, no, I'm good, thanks. I've always liked shopping. I've always liked going to the mall, hanging out, shopping, stuff. So I definitely don't identify with this idea of all of the money and the fame and the muscles and the women and the like. Even when I was younger, and guys would talk about like all their conquests and all these women they'd been with, I was kind of like, but why? And I've never really gotten past that, and I understand the why. Before anybody throws it in the comment section, I don't get it. It doesn't appeal to me. It's never appealed to me. Um, it's just it's never been it's never been an attractive idea for me. That, like, for instance, there were times that when I was younger and I'd go to the bar, and I would go with a friend of mine who he got around. He might more fit this than this. Although he wouldn't have been this, he was far too emotional. He was a really good guy actually, but yeah, he had been with a lot of. We would be at the bar and I'd spot somebody. Hey, she's kind of cute, and he's like, yeah, I was with her. She's not bad, and I'm like, seriously, like I no, that's not. It's not Cars, man. That's not cool. So it's just it, and there were a couple of ladies that may have said a few things to me, and he's like, hey, you should totally take her up on that offer because I did. And I'm like, no, that's just no. And so it really always felt like I was a fish out of water in those circumstances because I wasn't acting like a lot of guys would. Like I was like, I want to get to know somebody better. I want to actually, I don't know, have an actual emotional connection to somebody because I find that more important. There have been times where even with a woman I've been dating or a woman I've been with, where I'd rather sit down and talk. I'd rather actually discuss my day first before any of the romantical stuff takes place, which I guess is kind of odd. And I'm still of that nature where I mean, sure, are there days where I'm really angry and a little bit of romance might fix that up? Sure. That's kind of a thing. That's kind of how that works, and it's probably better if you're in a relationship and feel that way. But in general, I have to have that emotional, that actual connection to a person. I've lost count of how many times that I've known somebody, and found them attractive, even if physically they wouldn't normally be my type. And the opposite is true as well, where I would see a woman and say, well, she is beautiful, and then she talks to me, and I'm like, wow, I'm gonna need a drink. And I don't drink, but I'm gonna need one if you're gonna talk to me for more than 5 minutes. I don't know that I could do that sober. And that's different. And I know that, again, in this area, it's just who cares. All that matters is, are they hot? That's just it. And for me, it doesn't. I know that was an argument I had, and again, I'm going back a long time here, but again, it speaks back to this idea of there's a certain way a man should act. And so when I would say, well, I'm fine being single, be like, well, I can go find you a woman, and I'm like, no, that's okay, thanks. I'm good. I will find myself a woman on my own, I guess. Even if it's not working so well right now, I can do that. I'm capable. I can do that. But it is something that I know that at times I remember when I started when I got into the first serious relationship I had. One of the first times I went to church, and a couple of people I knew at the church found out I had a girlfriend, and the reaction was one of, "Oh, we thought you were gay," and they thought I was gay because I was always hanging around with the girls at church, and I didn't really hang around with the guys that much. I hung around with some of them, but from when I was a teenager until now, and I think it's partly because I was raised by my mother. I mean, for all the talk I always see online about, oh, single parent homes are the problem, I was raised in a two parent home, But my dad wasn't there. And if he was, a lot of the time he'd either been drinking or he was passed out from drinking or he was angry because he wasn't drinking. And so I had my mom. My mom and I were very, very close. And we got to the point where we had our own language too, which if you have one parent that's smarter than another, that can be a problem because her and I would make little comments that he didn't understand, and so he'd get really mad at us. The worst part, of course, is that when somebody has a temper and you get used to all of the same phrases coming out all the time, you might, when they're not around, say those phrases and have little contests about who can act more like that person. In this case, it was my father, and I was quite good at acting like my father. So, he would have these little angry outbursts and he would say word for word the same thing that I had predicted he would say, which would lead to, maybe a little bit of giggling here and there. It's not very alpha male like behavior. It's just not. And so he'd get mad and he'd, punch the walls or whatever. That was rare because the walls were pretty thin and I don't think he wanted to fix them. But you know, this is just that's how life works. And I just look at this whole alpha movement and I think to myself, okay, so what's the plan here exactly? So you get all the cars, you get all the money. It's basically it's it's like it almost sounds mafia like or like just we want everything, but it's not that realistic. And again, I've never really had that unrealistic desire. Um, I mean, I'm still friends with people I went to high school with. I still, I like seeing updates because they look old too, so that makes me feel better. And I haven't seen anybody that's my age now that I feel like is still in this. I guess there might be a few, but in that sphere, I'm confused because there should be an end goal. Like for instance, what I have with the Hockey Guy channel, it started out as something simple. I wanted to, as soon as I saw for the first time, I saw money on my YouTube account, and it was just 4 cents that first day. I said to myself, I could make money doing this. I didn't care how much. I didn't care how many subscribers I got. I didn't care how many watch hours I had. I didn't care how quickly it grew. All I knew was I could make money doing this, which would help alleviate a lot of the financial stress I was under. And I had a lot of financial stress at the time. And so I would come home every day and I would make 2, 3, sometimes 4 videos after a full day's work, which would generate maybe 25 cents of income each. Maybe. And so, that's not very alpha like, I don't think. Me sitting on a couch talking about hockey for hours at the end of my day. When Yvonne and I started dating, I told her, I said, all right, but before we go out on this date, we have to go to my apartment. I have to make these videos. And so she would sit quietly and wait for me to be done with my videos for the day. And then we could go out and do whatever. But again, it was with this idea that, if it grows enough, I would have a nice amount of money that I would have as a secondary income, maybe throw that into some RRSPs, that kind of thing, right? But I had no idea it would grow into what it did. I'd never had anything in my brain to tell me I'm going to get over 250,000 subscribers on my main channel. I'm going to get over 20,000 subscribers on my secondary channel. And this is going to blow up. So I really just looked at it from a beta perspective. I just, I enjoy doing this. It's fun. And that's that. Because I see these posts online, like for instance, Hooters. There was this idea that Hooters restaurant was closing up shop because millennials don't like breasts. Now, I will say there is some truth to the idea. They're not closing any locations. They're not changing anything. But I did have I did have a debate at one point with a guy I was working with, who basically said, well, he didn't care if a woman that he was dating had breasts at all. And I said, you don't care that they have them? He's like, well, what do they really do anyways? And I'm like, uh so that led to an interesting discussion where I started thinking, okay, so the generation after mine is quite different. This is quite different from what I grew up with in the 80s and the early 90s, right? And quite different from what my generation would have said. And again, that may be part of why I don't understand the alpha thing. May very well be generational. Because what I've been hearing is that there's a lot of younger adults and a lot of teenagers that are into this whole idea of, the ideal is you got to eat all your meat, you got to get all your strength and all your muscles, and you got to get like your big Ford truck, hopefully with the big mag wheels and preferably with the big smokestacks on the side. And if you can run over some baby cows while you're getting to the road, that'd be great. And then you pick up them baby cows and you just tear them apart with your teeth. Just do it, because that's what a man will do. I just it's just no, that's not for me. And if that's the next generation, I will never understand that. But it is such a weird conversation to even try to have. It's such an odd topic because again, I don't get it. I really don't get it. I have a good life. I have, my bills are taken care of. I have, the channels that have enriched my life in a fantastic way. I have a woman in my life who I know loves me and is there for me in a way nobody ever was before. And I would argue nobody ever would be again. So I appreciate what I have. And I didn't need to do any of that stuff that I keep hearing about on the alpha side. Because they see the post, well, if you're an alpha, you'll do this. And I'm like, I wouldn't have done that when I was in my 20s. Heck with that. I'm going to go sit down and watch some Star Trek. Do you want to watch Star Trek? Like, it just, it's odd. And I think that the idea of patterning yourself after someone else, it can be problematic. One thing I'll throw in here from a YouTube perspective. When my channel started up, I did not pattern my channel after what anyone else was doing. I didn't pattern what I was talking about after anything else. I just talked about what I wanted to. It evolved into becoming the Hockey Guy channel. I started out wanting to talk about Doctor Who, and there wasn't an interest in that. So I pivoted and went over to the hockey videos. And I mean, the Doctor Who reviews are still on the hockey channel. Just throwing that out there because they're still there. I should probably move them over to this channel, but then they'd post and then people are like, what's this crap? So, because the video quality is terrible. But I just don't get that idea that you have to, yeah, I don't understand. I don't think that it's a majority either when it comes to males who think that that's how every man should be or most masculine. And certainly if you look back through history, uh, men used to wear a lot of ruffles. Men wore a lot of wigs. Men have worn some interesting looking pantaloons. There's been some interesting things men have worn that wouldn't be considered manly on any level now. And that was the style. Styles change, and styles will continue to change. One of the reasons too why I kept getting the hockey stuff and stayed wearing jeans was it never went out of style. I got tired early 90s, late 80s. I tried to do whatever the style was at the time, and the style's always changing. Always. And it gets ridiculous and it gets expensive. You go out, you buy a whole bunch of new clothes, you're like, all right, this is the new fad. All right, I'm gonna embrace it. I'm gonna wear the new fad. I'm gonna wear, and then 6 months later, nobody's wearing it. It's like, ah, oh, cool. So I'll just throw all that out then, and we'll forget that I have, because this is actually kind of comfortable clothing, but all right, cool. I guess I can't sing, can't touch this anymore, right? Because I don't have the parachute pants. I never had parachute pants. I never liked how low they hung. I didn't think that looked comfortable. But I mean, like, yeah, do I do the treadmill all the time? Yes, I do it because I think it keeps my heart strong. It's important to stay in shape. It's important to feel like you have energy. I find I have more energy on the days where I do the treadmill. And that's really what it is. It's for my own well-being and my own sense that I'm doing what I can to hold off the aging process as well as I can. Good luck with that. Mother Nature is relentless. But I don't understand the whole alpha thing. And I don't feel like it's a majority. I feel like it's, as a lot of things are on the internet, the loud people will be the minority, but they're loud enough that it may make them sound like the majority. And with the way the internet is, you can get a global, pretty good group of people globally to basically follow what you're saying and say, I agree, you're absolutely right. I'm not in that realm, and I don't see any way that I could be either. I just wanted to have a little chat. I also know that I have a lot of subscribers who are in the age range where a lot of this discussion might be taking place. And I just wanted to throw my own 2 cents in there. Because if you're feeling a lot of pressure right now, like you have to be somebody that you're not, and you have to, bulk up and you have to do all this to be a real man, it's a little crap. To me, the real man's the guy who gets up in the morning, rolls out of bed, goes to work at his job, works the full 8 hours, does his damn job, doesn't whine when he does his job, doesn't talk about how he's too good for his job, stays the whole time and goes home and takes care of his bills first. You have to pay your bills first. Make sure that you're taking care of what you have to. You don't need handouts. If you need a handout, if you need some help, there's nothing wrong with that. But pay people back and avoid payday loans by all costs because payday loans are predatory, horrible, and just gross. And get rich quick schemes do not work. There are so many get rich quick schemes right now that I see and I go, well, that's a Ponzi scheme. That's just not. And in general, if you have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that all say we're going to get rich doing this, they're not going to. That's just not how things work. Now, there are exceptions. There are definitely a few exceptions, but in general, if you have a huge group of people that are all trying to get rich, watching Red Letter Media, they did a video on how VHS tapes are being resold now and suddenly they're collectible, which is crap. VHS tapes don't last. I can understand collectability with certain things. VHS tapes are awful. Not only that, I've had VHS tapes that brand new out of the box don't work. So, no, there's a reason we replaced VHS because it was a crap technology. And it was actually more expensive to make than the DVDs, but the DVDs were more expensive because reasons. Maybe in part because they knew that they were going to have to replace those VHS tapes over and over again and they would not have to replace the DVDs. But I mean, technology advances, and there's a reason that we don't use VHS anymore. But there are people now that are buying them thinking and speculating they're going to be worth a lot of money. I don't think they will. And I think you're selling to a very limited market where we're all buying from each other. I've talked about hockey cards and how I don't buy hockey cards because of the collectability. I don't buy hockey cards because of what they're worth. I buy them because I enjoy buying hockey cards. Why do I have jerseys? I've had the question so many times, how much is your collection worth? I don't care. I don't care what my collection's worth, whether it's jerseys, memorabilia, books, any of it. I don't care. Now, for insurance reasons, Yvonne's got an estimate that she's used for our renter's insurance because you need to have that. I'm a collector. Collectors generally don't care what that collection is worth so much. But collectors enjoy the collecting. Now, for me, the jersey collection is as close to complete as you can get. Any jersey that you can buy on the market, National Hockey League related, I have. If I do not have it, it's because it's not produced or it hasn't been released yet for me to buy it. And I think that's fantastic. I consider that to be an accomplishment. Didn't need to be an alpha to get it. Just didn't even have to pretend for a moment. I've never done a single video on my main channel. I'm like, so I was out lifting some bricks and some logs, looking for some chicks and just some manly stuff, that kind of manly stuff. And thinking about heading down to the gym again later because might want to bulk up, take some bulking stuff and some protein and maybe some whey powder, just cram it all down my gullet. No. 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 Absolutely not, no. The last time I got challenged to a fight by a friend of mine, my response to him was, why don't you go out and start without me and tell me how it's going? I might be out in a bit. Because I don't fight either. And that's just one of those things where, somebody will get mad at me when we're having an argument. Just, do you want to have a fight? No. Why? And to me, that's kind of their way of saying, well, I've lost the fight. So why don't we have a real fight? Because I lost the other one. Because at that point, I consider, I guess I won because he wants to go out and punch things. So go ahead. Go ahead. I just don't. And again, at my age, why? Just why? But that's me. And again, I don't try to tell other people how to live or how to be or anything like that. And as an influencer, and I don't like that term at all, I think it's important for me, just on a personal level, to be as approachable to people as possible, as down to earth as possible. And I've never boasted. One thing that I always see and I'm like, what are they talking about is, you think you're such an expert. I have never once in my entire life said I'm an expert on anything. Maybe on Star Wars when I was younger. before it became a big thing. When I was watching Star Wars movies and nobody else gave a damn. And then Phantom Menace came out and all of a sudden everybody was Star Wars fans again. But honestly, I've never considered myself to be an expert. Anytime that somebody will say, "Oh, you're so smart," I'll say, "No, I just remember things. I'll read things, or read them, and if I enjoy something, I'll read it over and over and over again, so that the memory, keeps that information and goes." Like astronomy, there was an astronomy book in my library. I would read it. I want to say once a month, and I did that for years. And I'd go cover to cover, and then I'd get it again and read it cover to cover, so that eventually all that astronomy stuff stayed. The problem is now when an astronomy show's on and I start watching it, I'm like, I already know this stuff, and I want the more advanced stuff. But then the advanced stuff usually involves a bunch of math that just I don't get. So kind of caught in the middle there, and I guess that's why I'm still a beta. I don't even care about any of this, but I'd be interested to know your thoughts, because I do find the whole thing odd. I'm not sure what we're afraid of. This idea that manliness is going to go by the wayside. No, it's not. It's just not. Because manliness is not defined by your muscles. Manliness is not decided by the car you drive. It's not decided by how much stuff you got. Maybe to some people it is, but in the end, you can't take any of it with you anyways. We've also seen, if you're a wrestling fan and a sports fan in general, you know that for some of these people that need to use steroids in order to get that bulk to stay, that's very harmful, and it can cause heart problems, and people have died. Wrestlers, looking back decades, there have been deaths that have been related to steroids, and it's too bad, because in the case of, I think it was Eddie Guerrero, I don't think he was on them anymore, but it had done the damage to the point where that's what happened. So, yeah, never done steroids. I know, shows, doesn't it? And yeah, I think it's important for people to feel comfortable in their own skin, comfortable in who they are, and if they want to be loud and obnoxious and muscular, cool, and if they don't, that's cool too. That's fine, because it's always been a melting pot of ideas and of people and of different various, and especially now with the internet, it is global, so you're not going to be able to find people that all agree with each other, as has been the case with every video I've ever made. So, because there's always been at least one downvote on every video I've ever made, because people are dedicated to that downvote. Not that that does anything. Downvotes actually do not impact a video's ability to go viral, a video's anything, really. It doesn't have an effect. YouTube at one point, I think it did, but YouTube took that away, because I think there were people that were taking that system and abusing it to try to push down channels that they didn't like. And it wasn't that it was bad material. The downvote was meant more for, this is a misleading video, or this video is really poorly produced. And it just became, I don't like this person. So you'd go through and get all your friends to not like them either, or create multiple accounts to not like them. And it just, yeah, it became a mess. So YouTube kind of took care of the mess. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this. The whole alpha discussion and where it is and what it is and all that. I just find the whole thing strange, but maybe it's just me. Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. Whether you're an alpha or you're a beta, you're welcome here. It's just, different people. And I think it's weird, too, that we only have two categories here for men. And if we were going to get into talking about different kinds of women, this board would be full. This board would be absolutely full. But with men, apparently it's just this simple, and I don't think it's that simple for men either. Just isn't. There are a lot of different kinds of men, and I'm the kind that doesn't fight, doesn't drink, doesn't do any of the fun stuff, really. But I produce content. It's my job, and I provide for my family, and I do the best I can day by day. All right, let me know your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.